Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're a great audience here in Lithuania, in Vilnius, Lithuania. Tonight I want to take you back to 1990. If you weren't born then, don't try this. Just relax. It's 1990. Nelson Mandela has just been freed from prison. The Berlin Wall has come down, uniting East and West Germany. Tim Berners-Lee, a grad student in CERN, Switzerland, has written a little paper on a proposal for something called the World Wide Web. Iraq invades Kuwait, and that year 2 million brick-sized mobile phones were sold in 1990. Now, today we know things are a little different. The mobile phone and the internet is part of our everyday lives, but let's take a journey to the next 30 years. I want to talk about the year 2050. I have no idea what will be at the end of this century, but I'm going to try to get us to the middle of the century, and then I'll come back and give the next talk for the second half, if that's all right. We'll just cover the next 30 years right now. So I'm curating a list for you of drivers that I think will be influential this century, and I hope that you'll appreciate that I've taken this from hundreds and hundreds of potential drivers and distilled it down to these 8 things, which I'll spend about 5 minutes on each. So I'm going to fly you low over the world of 2050 and see what we can notice about the changes between then and today. And the first one is urbanization. In the world right now, we have about 55% urban population. Over the next 20 years or 15 years or so, we'll go to 61, and then by 2050, we'll be at 68% urbanization. That means in the next 30 years, the number of people living in cities will double from today. Today we have about 4 billion. In 2050, we'll have about 8 billion people living in cities. And much of this, so think about it, every single city in the world, large or small, is going to double in the next 30 years. We're going to pour as much concrete in the next 30 years as we've ever poured in history. We'll string as much cable. We'll lay as many roads. We'll do as much as we've ever done again in the next 30 years. And it's typified by the rise of mega cities. A mega city is a city with 10 million or more people. The average mega city of 37 on Earth right now is about 12 million people. You get a sense of it. New York is about 13 million people. Soon enough, we will have 43 megacities, and by the year 2050, we'll have 10 billion people on Earth and 50 megacities, 50 cities, 10 million or more. At that time, the average megacity will be about 20 million people. Pay attention to these 3 cities, Karachi, Lagos, and Kinshasa. Karachi and Kinshasa are the 2 cities with the largest number of people under 15 today, here in 2050. They are still growing like weeds. These are cities over 30 million, and there will be almost 50 of these around the world. Now, 40, 30, 31, 32, 35 million sounds like a lot of people. We don't have any cities that size today. The largest city today, I think, is 23 million. Tokyo and Mexico City and Shanghai are all sort of vying for the top spot right now. But 50 million is within reach. Could we possibly end the century with a city with 100 million people in one city? We will. It's called Xinjiang. Jing-jin-ji, sorry. This is a 3-canton or 3-province region of China that is already planning to merge, where they will have specialized area for industry, research, healthcare, supply chain, education, and government. And they're building a high-speed rail that will connect the outermost parts of this region to Beijing so people can commute in 2 hours from anywhere to be able to participate in the central life in Beijing. It's 130 million people. They are planning on 130 million people. This is more people than the top 100 cities in the United States, plus the population of Great Britain combined. This is very likely what we'll see in this century. Jing-Jin-Ji will lead the world as the largest region. You notice that this is not China, this is a region. And so the take-home lesson here is that regions could become the new states. Regions may bring more autonomy. Regions may even bring smaller government and smaller institutions. Regions will set their own laws, have their own dialects and languages that are different from other regions, and they'll probably be more important than the states they live in. How that plays out around the world will be very interesting, but keep this in mind, regions are growing in importance. 2, blockchain. Decentralization is a general concept that blockchain embodies. There are many other embodiments of the idea of decentralization. And whenever a new technology comes along, like blockchain, the first thing we do is we imitate the old world and the old methodologies with the new technology. And it usually takes a decade until people find new ways to apply it. But it's never about the technology. It's never about the technology. It's always about people. People's ability to think new thoughts and change their habits and try new things. So a quick flyover of the blockchain world. A blockchain is a shared ledger that lets us transact safely without middlemen. That's all it is. It doesn't have anything to do with blocks or chains. It's just a shared ledger, and that's the magic trick of the blockchain. It lets us reconcile our accounts immediately, and the settlement is the sale. As we make the sale, we make the settlement. This removes layers of institutional middlemen that today occupy the largest buildings in every city: banks, insurance companies, and government buildings. This removes whole floors of office workers from their jobs, pitchforking data from one screen to another. We can now do that using the trust machine of the blockchain. What can you do with a blockchain? The blockchain has 4 fundamental uses. You can store value, you can exchange value, you can store permanent records without an intermediary, and you can execute programs on all of the above. That's the only 4 things you can do with a blockchain, and it turns out that's the only 4 things you need to build a bank or an insurance company or a large institution. The blockchain can replace all of that using programmed, algorithmically driven channels for moving money. And that leads to some interesting things. I want to illustrate the concept of smart contracts. So in a smart contract, in a normal contract, let's call it a dumb contract, you have a buy now button. And then when you click that button on an Amazon page or shopping anywhere, that invokes a contract. That involves rights and obligations on both sides, right? This is a contract. If you want to read that contract, it's in the terms of use in the fine print that no one ever reads. But if you have a problem and it comes to a severe, there's a real disagreement, you'll both be reading that particular written document to see what your rights are. It will specify what your options are. Sometimes in plain language, most of the time in obfuscatory language that makes it difficult for anyone to know who has what rights at all. And a blockchain smart contract puts that language into code and executes it. So here's an example. Here's an example of a smart contract. This is EtherRisk. They put some money into a smart contract about 1.5 years ago, and they let you specify what flight you were on, choose the day, choose the flight number, and then you could put money into a contract that would pay you off if the flight was delayed more than 40 minutes. You would get 10 times your money back. It's programmed to do this without any intermediaries. If the flight was canceled, and they could get this data from the official flight information from the flight controllers, then you'd get a 30x payoff. So it's a payoff It's what we call a betting contract, a payoff contract. There's no people in the middle. There's no registration. They have no idea who you are. You can put as much money as you like. You don't have to be on the flight to engage this smart contract. You can put as much as you like. It's a bet. And you can bet if you're on the flight, it's insurance. If you're not on the flight and you want to shoot it down to make some money, it's a bet. It's a bet. It's a betting contract. There's no registration. There's no one to call. They have no idea who you are. Your money is locked in the contract until the event happens. It comes in from outside, and bam, the payoff happens. There's enough money to manage the payoffs, and the actuarial numbers vary from flight to flight based on previous history of each flight. That is an example of a smart contract. It has to execute. It executes on every one of 17,000 computers worldwide in a mesh network. If you wiped out 98, 99% of all those computers, it would be able to reconstitute itself. No one is at the control, and no one can turn it off. That's the blockchain today. And we are just going to innovate from here by putting many, many services into smart contracts of different kinds. In fact, quite a few blockchains are now programmable, and we'll see now an explosion of new applications. An example is Civil. Civil is a new kind of journalism. It's a new journalism a paradigm because instead of using advertising as a business model, or maybe being supported by by subscriptions, they want people to pay who consume the journalism to pay for it. But here's the catch: they are using a skin in the game coin called the Civil, and using the Civil to publish anything on the system, you have to stake a little bit of money. You have to put money up to publish. And after you do, the public, the readers, will pay, they'll vote, they'll read, and they'll vote whether it's true or not. They'll vote on the truthiness of your story. And if they vote that it's not true, you lose your money. It's a money game. It's another betting game that uses token economics to determine the crowd value of whether it's true or not. And the people who put up the most truthful stories and get voted true over and over again will survive, and it will cost you money to lie. It will cost you money to lie using a skin in the game coin. And so they're hoping to reinvent journalism with a single token that represents the value of quality journalism. So this is just a tiny sliver of blockchain, but blockchain will unleash an entirely new way of thinking about business models and economies and economics that will change a lot. And it will kind of combine with the previous idea of regions as more autonomy. It will give more autonomy to individuals, and it will empower people to try things that will have a payoff using a game that goes toward the desired behavior. And the game will involve money. And the first example of that is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a game that people play with money, and as they participate and provide value to that network, they get rewarded. So there'll be a lot of rewarding economics coming using blockchain technology. In life sciences, we are going to see some incredible acceleration. Now, the first development I want to talk about is gene editing. You see the sickle cells here that are the flat cells. This helps prevent getting malaria, but it also makes the person sick. It's a genetic disease with one single letter of DNA wrong, defective. It's one single letter. And we have a new technology called CRISPR-Cas9 that lets us edit genes just the same way we do with a word processor. We can cut and paste. So the first thing we do is we see the defective molecule, we reproduce it as a guide molecule, and then we use a virus to inject the guide molecule, find the exact match, and then it will automatically replace it with the new DNA, repairing the DNA in the cell. This has already been used to extract bone marrow from a woman who had sickle cell anemia, grow her stem cells in a dish, add this CRISPR-Cas9 virus, which altered the gene, took out the faulty gene, multiplied enough, grew a new batch of cells, injected them back into her bone marrow. She is cured. Already this has happened. She is cured of sickle cell disease. On the other side of the malaria spectrum, we have these guys, female Anopheles mosquitoes. They are the ones who carry the parasite and inject it into our blood. They have now used CRISPR-Cas9 to re-engineer a mosquito gene that is resistant to the parasite, that rejects the parasite, that doesn't let the parasite grow. Otherwise, the mosquito is normal. The other thing about this gene is that it's dominant. So they are already able to unleash female mosquitoes who have eggs that hatch and turn into, again, disease-resistant, non-malaria mosquitoes, and those will dominate the population. Now, at the same time, Bill Gates has been spending hundreds of millions of dollars on lasers to zap mosquitoes out of the air. This is just a bunch of female mosquitoes that are going to bite you and not make you sick. This will change malaria. We will eradicate malaria in the next 30 years the same way we will eradicate cash from the face of the earth. These are both unwanted things, and we will not get to 2030 with either of them. This has already been done. When you have retinitis pigmentosa, you see less and less and less over time. This is a genetic disease. And they've already taken skin cells from patients, isolated the master cells, the pluripotent. No, the stem cells. They've isolated the stem cells, grown a new version with a new gene of stem cell and inserted it into the eye and cured the disease. It's already done. They will be able to cure genetic diseases. Now, they won't pass on the right genes they'll still pass on the wrong genes, but we're working on that too. So we will see the deletion through cut and paste of many diseases in the next 30 years and many more after that. This is just the beginning, CRISPR-Cas9. In the 1950s, a scientist named Hayflick took a bunch of cells and tried to see if he fed them well, how long they would multiply and reproduce, how many times. And it turns out that no animal cells reproduce more than 60 times. It's called the Hayflick limit. It's been known for a long time. And through the work many people have been doing, notably Aubrey de Grey, who was kind of a pioneer in aging research, we have been able to get the human lifespan up year after year after year, about 2.5 years every 10. We've been able to raise the human lifespan across the world. That's been a pretty linear path for the last 30 years, mostly by eliminating childhood diseases, mostly by eliminating childhood deaths before the age of 5, not so much by extending life. However, we can now feed a soup of material called DAN plus to worms, middle-aged worms. They just feed it to them and they live 10 times longer. Middle-aged worms live 10 times longer. Mice now live 2 times longer. You feed it to a middle-aged mouse, lives an extra year. We're making incredible progress now because the funding is starting to come in to geriatric research, to extending life, and we're treating it as a disease. What we've found is that through 7 different pathways, our cells break down due to damage. And they're damaged in 7 different ways, all of which researchers are now working on repairing. Some with genetic tools, others with various kinds of medicines. In the mouse models and in the lab, we're making a tremendous amount of progress right now, extending life. We will, in the next 10 years, start to move more toward human models. And in 10 to 20 years, we'll start to see clinical and drug products that will let us give middle-aged people in their 20s or 30s or 40s, some new drugs that will extend their lives by decades. Decades. So there are a couple different possible scenarios here. By 2050, right now the average human lifespan is about 75 years worldwide. It will be 85 years, that's for sure, we know that. That's easy. It could also be that the first 140-year-old person has already been born. Why do we say that? Because 30 years from now, that person will be 30 years old, and we'll have the medicine we can give them to extend their life, double their lifespan. This is not hard to imagine. This is entirely within the realm of possibility. It's said that after the first 140-year-old born, somewhere around 10 years later, the first 200-year-old person will be born, because every year that goes by, we're able to extend more and more. And that brings us to actuarial escape velocity, a term coined by Aubrey de Grey that says what? That we're just going to get so much better at healing or preventing damage that you may die. You may die by an accident or some other terrible illness, but you may not die from old age. Old age may not be a killer. By 2050, I'm guessing this is not yet true. I'm guessing we're not hitting actuarial escape velocity by 2050. It's hard to imagine that it won't happen by 2100. Give it another 100 years. It's hard to imagine that we won't somehow make it to actuarial escape velocity on this planet for humans. Humans may, mutate and evolve to something else, but dying by old age could become a thing in the past for our great-grandchildren. This leads to something called transhumanism, which I don't have time to go into, but there are many people now researching ways to extend life in many, many interesting ways, all of which will be very surprising and unfamiliar to us today, and in 2050 will be far in the realm of possibility and probably in the realm of clinical use. Artificial intelligence. I'm going to tell you two stories. Last year, 2017, some programmers at DeepMind in London built a program that did deep learning. What's that? That means they trained it to play the game of Go, which has far more combinations than chess, backgammon, and poker, other games. Far more, astronomically more difficult. No one thought that this program would beat any human for a long time. And they trained it on games of experts. They trained it with expert data. And it played itself a bit, but mostly it played experts, so that when it saw an expert make a mistake, it would not make that mistake ever again. It can remember everything. Never make the same mistake again. You do that a couple million times, or 20 or 50 million times. And last year, they played this against KG, the number one human in Go, and KG lost 3 out of 3. KG had no interest in playing any further. The game was over. The game is over for humans in chess. The game is over for humans in Go. My game, backgammon, the game has been over for over 10 years already, probably 15. So here's what's interesting. Those same programmers in London built the next generation, and this is called AlphaGo Zero. They didn't teach it about master games. They didn't teach it any of the techniques of master Go players. They just told it the rules, only the rules of Go. And they told it to play itself and learn from itself what it could learn without any outside influence. It played itself for 40 days, after which it beat AlphaGo, the first program, 100 games in a row. 100 times. It had no idea how good players play. It didn't follow any of the patterns that we know from professional and experts. None of them. No one understands what it's doing. The programmers who designed it have no idea what it's doing. They taught it the rules of chess. It is now ranked in the top 10 in the world. Just by changing the rules. It generalizes. You could change one rule and it would be the world's best at that game. It has no data. It plays itself. It generalizes, ladies and gentlemen. It can learn anything. This is where we are today. This is 2017, 2018. This is a watercolor by a 17-year-old in Pennsylvania named Robbie Barrett. As a high school student, he got some open source AI software and told it to learn to paint. He's fed it hundreds of thousands of images of watercolors and told it to start painting. He also took another program. He didn't have to write these. He got them open source. And this is another program that learns to judge what a painting is, when a painting is good or not. This is called a generative adversarial network. Two programs, one that generates and the other that judges, and he just lets them run. And these ran for 17 days, I think, and generated until the judge program said it was good enough. The first one was just throwing paint onto the screen and pixels and doing whatever it thought was fun. And the other one said, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. It's good enough. After 17 days. People were astonished when he produced this picture. This is computer generated with no seed. Just the computer was just messing around until the other software decided it was a painting. No one could have predicted this. Now, another one showed it, famous pictures from the Fauve era in the 1920s and 30s in France, and it generated this until the acceptance program decided it was good enough to be a Fauve painting. Do you think it is? If you see the Fauve movement, this is one of those paintings. Now, here's a quiz for you. We're doing the same thing in the photography. One of these is synthetic, is made from scratch over a period of about 3 weeks using a photo detection algorithm that says when it looks real or not. Don't say it, but in your mind, decide which one you think is the real photo and which one is generated by a generative adversarial network. Do you know which one you've got? You think so? Anybody says they both are? They both are. From scratch. These people do not exist. I'm not judging. I'm not. The algorithm judges. These people don't exist. This is generated over about 3 weeks, each of them. Okay? This is where we are today. How fast does software learn? How fast do we learn? How fast do humans learn? This is today. We've got 30 more years of this. Now, a new sort of theory of mine is that connectedness changes everything, and connectedness is a big driver. People don't measure enough connectedness. But if you did measure connectedness, you'd see that the world has always been pretty complex. Complexity we kind of have already. Even our human bodies are extremely complex, right? But connectedness is what is moving us into a VUCA world. A VUCA world has many more uncertainties. And so we're going from kind of the theory and the Harvard Business School's insights to algorithms, models, patterns, and strong signals. That's more or less where we are today, to the world of weak signals, probabilities, hunches, and experiments. This is how Google runs their company. This is how society, this is something governments could learn to be more agile, to generate hunches and do experiments and try things and understand uncertainty, quantify, measure, and work with uncertainty, because that's the world we're going into. We're just on the verge of that. Sheldon Rennan talks about the fourth degree of connectedness being entangled. Does this make sense? It's not easy to measure, but if you start paying attention to connectedness, you can see that we're actually just getting started on connectedness, and that could lead to more black swan events, more unpredictable as things speed up and as we extend our reach from systems to systems, from person to person, we may have more unforeseen events. Now, on the flip side of that, it's interesting. We're also connecting everybody physically, and there's some really good things coming out of this. You can imagine that the internet's only 30 years old and that we're just really getting started connecting people, systems, and things. We're at the very beginning of this. Come back in 30 years, and you'll see an interesting byproduct is liquidity. If we can connect markets more tightly, we'll have more liquidity. More liquidity will lead to fewer surprises. We'll have more accurate market data, and the sailing will be smoother. We'll be able to reduce recessions using smart contracts and blockchain and autonomous software running algorithms. We could even replace central banks. And I'll be giving a talk about that in a few evenings. We could replace central banks and run a money supply, have a monetary policy that is much more predictable and has many fewer recessions, maybe no recessions. So we have to contrast the world of unpredictability as humans get connected with the world of markets, which are becoming more smooth, and there's more liquidity, and that will change a lot. We change liquidity, we change society. So we'll be able to tokenize and trade everything of value. And that will change the fundamental nature of markets and of how we work with each other and how we move society forward. Resolution, another one of my theories, that it's not so much the amazing artificial intelligence, but it's actually just the day-to-day improvement of resolution, of camera resolution, of data storage, of voice quality, video quality, simply by doubling and doubling and doubling the resolution without really changing anything else fundamentally. It changes everything. And this is why the content online through Amazon and Netflix has gotten so good, because the picture is so good, because it's more cinematic. We're shooting at 24 frames a second now. We're going from video to cinema in our homes, and that changes the nature of the content. And why? Because we have doubled and doubled and doubled the resolution, the color resolution, the spatial resolution, the timing resolution, until it's gotten so good that producers and directors want to create for the new medium. And that is just spatial resolution. This is 4K. 4K is kind of the bleeding edge of ultra high definition, and now we'll go up exponentially so that in 10 years 4K will just be in your phone. 4K will just be in your house monitor. It'll be within 15 years 4K will be right here. That changes the nature of what we do with these things. And so I want to show that every minute, 150,000 emails, we send 3 million Facebook posts, 4 million Google searches, we do 450,000 tweets on Twitter, 500 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube, 46,000 photos on Instagram, 1 million Tinder swipes, and 16 million text messages. People buy 3,000 mobile phones every single minute, most of them smartphones. Things are starting to move faster because the resolution has increased, because of one thing. Because not that really so much the quality has increased, but because the driver is the underlying resolution of being able to do this. This is what people want to do. They want to do more than this. Increasing the resolution lets them do that. I want you to pay careful attention to this graph. This is a graph I have fitted very carefully to the data. As you go through it, you're going to see it looks similar. Actually, it's really closely fitted to the data. This is from 1960 to 1997. Moore's law governs the number of transistors on a chip. It's actually not about all the other things Moore's law says. We just associate it with that. It's the number of transitions on a square area of chip. And in 1997, we had 10 million transistors on the area of a chip. Okay? Go now and watch the scale here. Go now, 1997 is here, where we just were, 10 million transistors, okay? Now to 2003, 100 million transistors. Slightly different scale. Here's 2003 for 100. 2010, 1,000. 1 billion transistors on a chip in 7 years. 10 times in 7 years. Again, we're at 1 billion. It took 5 years to go the next order of magnitude to 10 billion. Billion. Yeah. And then we have from their 10 billion, it's going to take 3.5 years to get to 100 billion transistors on a chip. The iPhone 10 is going to look like a dog in 3 years. So every 7 years, we go up an order of magnitude, except we don't. It's every 6, no, it's every 5, now it's every 3 years we go up an entire order of magnitude in the resolution of most things. That rewrites the business model every cycle. Every time something goes up by a factor of 10, it trashes the old business model. So now we're at 3 years. Is there any sign of this slowing down? No, there is not. Get used to it. It's accelerating acceleration. It always looks like this. We're always at the elbow of everything. In 10 years, we'll still be at the elbow of everything, looking at the steepest curve we've ever seen. That is Moore's law. That is driving many of the things we use every day. I'm going to show you the scariest slide you'll see all week. Thomas Piketty's book showed that capital grows, produces money faster than labor, and that this capital effect creates inequality. If you think of capital as software and robots, our labor markets are about to change. Now, we've been adding jobs, this is jobs, for 50 years, a couple hundred years, we've been adding more jobs. It just steadily marches up, except for a mistake by the central bank right here. It just goes up and up and up. And in the meantime, we've invented personal computers, the World Wide Web, the blockchain, the robots that assemble the cars in the dark. We've done all that, and employment continues to rise. So there's no reason that with more innovation will come unemployment, not in the short term. In the short term, we're going up. And here's the scariest slide you'll see all week. Oh, that's the right answer. This is country by country. This is going to sink in a second. This is country by country. These green, let me go back. These green bars represent the growth of low-paying, low-wage jobs in each country over a period of 10 years. This trend continues now. It's a bit out of date, but the trend continues. These are the high-paying cognitive jobs, the growth rate. It's not the actual, it's not the absolute number, it's the growth rate over 10 years is going up. What are these? These are the middle-paying jobs. The middle-paying jobs are being decimated. Not only manufacturing, but in repetitive white-collar work. So you could think of it like this. The green jobs are the low-paying jobs that computers and robots don't feel like doing right now. They have other things to do. They make more money in here. They're not ready for that. These high cognitive jobs they're going after, as we just saw with the game of Go and many other applications of AI, but we know that AI does not replace jobs. It doesn't. AI creates jobs. Software creates new jobs, and they're less repetitive. But make no mistake, this trend continues to now. The only country that's really not in this game is China and Ethiopia. And China has just in the last 2 years started to see negative growth, an elimination of middle-paying jobs. China has the largest middle class in the world. China's middle class is starting to feel the bite of automation. All right, this does not mean that in the short term we will lose jobs, net jobs, but it means the kinds of jobs will change dramatically. Repetitive white-collar work is being eaten exponentially fast. These numbers will continue, and they will continue to eat into both of these categories over the next 30 years. Even as we don't lose that many jobs, after 2050, however, all bets are off. So this is the trend line for jobs. No matter what the technology comes, it always looks good. We could have plenty of new jobs. We could have lots of empowerment in many new kinds of jobs that are both augmented by and augment software and robots. And it could be a world where people don't do repetitive, boring work. On the other hand, we could have an augment-only world where it's not as inventive and based on new creations, but it's more based on helping the robots and the software. Or it's possible that in 2050, we will go to replacement. And in the replacement paradigm, we do start to lose jobs, probably not before 2040. We have plenty of jobs to do until then. That's cool. My kids are only 7 or 9 years old, so they'll be 35. Okay, well, go learn to code, kids. So right now, we are at peak white-collar worker for all of human history. Let me say that again. Right now, today, we are at peak white-collar worker for all of human history. We took 96% of jobs were farm jobs in the mid-1800s. By 1900, 96% were factory workers. By 1950, 96% were office workers or so, right? We are now at peak white-collar worker for the rest of time. Those new jobs on the green line, they're not office jobs. They're entertainment, they're leisure. They're service jobs that computers and software can't do yet and may not be able to do for a long time as long as we keep innovating them and providing new services for new needs. But right now, we're done with white-collar work. It is now downhill from here forever. And we'll need adaptive workforces. You can tell this may have something to do with education. The title of another talk. Number 8, governance. So we have a little problem with governance. The problem is that we elect people to do what we ask. And what do people do? Well, they make sure that their needs are taken care of first. And some of them really like fountain pens, expensive ones. Some of them like private jet travel. And so it's difficult to get representatives to do what we want without putting their own needs first and working on their own reelection. Some people try to monetize their positions and use their positions to enrich themselves. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote pretty easily, but didn't get elected because of the way we vote. So there's a lot of talk about voting and democracy and how we're going to run organizations, but we don't talk enough about how we vote, because how we vote determines the outcome of the vote. The Marquis de Condorcet in the 1800s showed that if you have very rough binary preference selection, you can end up with circular preferences that get you into a hole and accidentally elect the wrong person. This has been shown more by the work of Ken Arrow, that we need to work hard on the way we elect representatives, because the way we're doing with straight line voting typically, or runoff votes, is pretty Stone Age. There are better ways to vote. This is range voting. Range voting captures higher granularity preference information from people, and in this case, you can just vote on any of these things as much as you like. You're just giving a relative preference. You can even have negative numbers for certain things. There's a whole theory behind range voting that lets us use more or less today's voting machinery, but come out with a much, much better outcome where a small group cannot spoil an election. That's just the beginning. We're now entering the world of market-based governments where we will see new ideas, new creations in the way we elect people to represent us. Plutarchy is a betting market. Quadratic voting is amazing. It means you buy votes, and the more votes you buy, the more expensive they are. So the first vote costs you $1, second vote costs you $4, the third vote costs you $9, the fourth vote costs you $16, and so forth. If you wanted to swing an election with money, it would take more money than all the money on earth. And all the money gets redistributed back to everybody. So you're not really buying votes. You're buying votes, but then everybody gets the money again. So you're not buying the election. But this kind of thinking about new market-based governance mechanics is far superior to the old Stone Age caveman voting that we have today. This is just a few examples. We will also have DAOs where we don't need representatives anymore. We don't have to elect people who make decisions for us. We can just all vote and let the software carry out our common wishes and preferences expressed in a smart way to vote, and the software does it. Have you noticed a recurring theme here? The software's going to do it for us. We won't have to have people in the middle. We won't need a Federal Reserve Open Market Committee to make decisions that put millions of people out of work. We can use software. Who would like IBM Watson to be your doctor? I would. Not very many yet. Not the doctor in the house. I would. Watson, something like Watson. Now we have the doctor raising his hand. Why? Because the software can read every paper ever written, including the most important ones and most cited ones of the last 6 months, and be far more up to date than your antiquated wetware doctor who went to medical school 30 years ago and hasn't read very many papers since. It is not up to date. If you know UpToDate.com, that database has far better information than your doctor does now. We've already seen it in diagnostic imaging. Diagnostic imaging is now the domain of software, not humans. They're so much better. So we can govern using smarter approaches. And this is a tripartite approach. It's been used many times in the past, and we're going to start putting it into software. For example, in an ICO or an organization with with a crowdfunding campaign, we can have 1/3 founders, 1/3 builders, and 1/3 users, and you can see that each group is going to have to cooperate with another to get anything done, right? It's not the way they do it in Israel, where everybody needs some tiny sliver of group to assemble a coalition, but it's a 2/3 majority, and not each of these has to have 100% or even 2/3. It could be 50-50. There's different ways to design these games. And this is the realm of what we call mechanism design. Mechanism design can use skin-in-the-game coins, can use things of value, items of value that cost money to produce results that are far better for the majority than the representative way we do it now. So just to add one extra thing, we're adding 1.5 million new humans to the planet every week right now. 1.5 million every week. We're building a city the size of Seattle every month right now. 2018. Who is a little bit depressed? Who is hopeful? It's about 60% depressed, 40% hopeful. So let me do a magic trick and flip the depressed around, okay? If you're not feeling optimistic, let me do a little magic trick and summarize. Regions are becoming states. That means nations will be smaller. There will be smaller institutions and more empowerment. Autonomy using blockchain and other decentralized technologies and decentralized mindset will bring empowerment of individuals at the scale of the world and empower people in developing nations to catch up over the next 30 years. These megacities are going to afford kids in developing countries the ability to get a good school, to get a good education, a world-class education. It's going to afford people the ability to raise their children without having to do hard labor. The autonomy in this is the message. It's going to allow us to scale without having to scale our institutions. Humans will enhance technology. Technology will enhance humans. Uncertainty and volatility, yes, there will be acceleration of change, no question, but we'll have more liquidity, we'll have better functioning markets, we'll have smoother transitions because the information is better distributed. There won't so much be the wolves and the sheep in the markets where some people have an information advantage. Markets are very efficient. If we could just give them the scale to do their thing, we can also have better monetary policy by letting software take that job away from humans. They are driving the car dangerously, and we can use autopilot to do a better job. That means fewer recessions, maybe a lot fewer recessions. We will live longer lives, and we will not do boring, repetitive work. Yes, we will have to reinvent ourselves every 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 years. Yes, we will have to adapt. Yes, we will need a new kind of education. Yes, things will be different. But maybe we will have a higher quality of life. Maybe we will live longer with a higher quality of life. The world has never moved as quickly as it has until today. And it will never go as slowly as it does right now. Maybe change is good.